Welcome to Introducing the World's Most Advanced Percona Backup and Recovery. I would now like to turn it over to your first presenter today, Frank Barker. Frank, you now have the floor.
Thank you very much, Charlene, and welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us today. So as you heard, my name is Frank Barker, and I have the honor to be the CEO of Bacula Systems. I'll be joined today by one of our co-founders, Arno Lehmann, from our technical team. So, what are we covering today? Well, the topic today is Percona and MySQL Backup, and one of our recent announcements on our Percona Backup and Recovery solution. So we'll be talking about how IT teams can improve the way they manage their MySQL and Percona and Oracle and MariaDB backup and recovery, what the benefits that they will see are, and as is traditional in our webinar series, we'll be foreshadowing some upcoming announcements from Bacula Systems relevant to our discussions. So what is MySQL Percona? Well, as I think everyone on this webinar will be aware, it's an open source relational database management system compatible with Oracle MySQL. Okay? There's an open source hot backup utility for MySQL-based servers that performs non-blocking backups of the database, so keeping the database up as long as possible while a backup is done. In this webinar, we will discuss the use and integration of this capability with Bacula Enterprise. So what's the issue we're addressing here with this product and this announcement? Well, the default MySQL tools, I think as everyone knows, are very flexible, but unfortunately, they do not scale too well. And in larger systems, the backup and restore times can become unacceptably long. And another way has to be found to solve the backup problem. For example, in an e-commerce situation, taking servers offline for any length of time really just doesn't work and can easily be equated to lost revenue. If your servers are offline for a few seconds of revenue can equate to many, many dollars, and of course that's a big deal in your backup and business environment. So this is what we're going to talk about today. So before we go into how we do this with Bacula Enterprise Edition, I need to give you a short backgrounder on Bacula itself. So what is Bacula? Okay. Bacula is used by data centers worldwide as a core and trusted part of the backup strategy of an organization. It's a fully featured product. It covers all of the options you could imagine of cloud, physical, virtual, container environments, and all the hybrid options you can have in between. It does all of this through a single platform, which is scalable from a few machines to many thousands of machines. It's very flexible and a very powerful product. And you can tell this by the kind of companies who use our product. So let's have a look at a few of these. You might recognize some of the companies mentioned here. You will typically find Bacula in companies that have a lot of data. Companies like Sky or Turner Studios, who use us for the backup and restore of broadcast programs, or organizations like NASA and the huge amounts of data that they amass. You will also find us in organizations that have tight budgets, like universities. You'll find us in companies that have both lots of data and tight budgets. I think here of managed service providers who are in an incredibly competitive marketplace, and organizations like Velocity, LocalWeb, the largest service provider in Latin America, or Rackspace, I think, which many of you will know. These organizations, lots of data and very tight budgets, are where you will also find Bacula. Okay. You'll also find us in smaller organizations like Outfittery, who like us because of their cost effectiveness, flexibility, and technology. Bacula Enterprise itself, when you look at the product, you can see the way it's architected. It gives a lot of insight into why it's so popular. On the left-hand side of this slide, you see the many interfaces we have, which can be mixed and matched into our product. So we have our bWeb management suite, our flagship graphical user interface. We have a programmatic access with REST API. We have a Bacula administration tool GUI And of course, we have command line and scripting with bconsole. So many ways to interface with a product. And in organizations, you find these being mixed and matched. On the right-hand side, we have many storage options, from tapes, auto changers, virtual tape libraries, disks array, all the different types of cloud providers that are out there, appliances, deduplicating storage devices. We have many, many target storage options. Okay. Then in the middle box, you see some of the key solution areas where we've created specific technologies. In hypervisor, we have KVM, Red Hat, VMware, Xen, Proxmox. We believe we have the broadest range in the marketplace. And to that, we've recently added our Docker capability. We have technologies that bring speed and flexibility, like NDMP and SAN storage. We cover the Microsoft world. We have single item restores for VMware, for Exchange, for NDMP. We have different backup products for different needs. Automated client-initiated backups, bare metal recovery, data compression, continuous data protection. We have a number of tools for databases, SAP, SAP HANA, Oracle, MySQL that we talk about today. This is an incredibly wide capability, which enables us to do the job very cost effectively for most organizations. So in summary, if you have a lot of data or a limited budget, or both, you should be talking to us if you aren't already. One of the reasons we are so popular, in addition, of course, to our ability to do the job, is that we don't charge by data volume, which we would position as an old world method coming from a time when disks would spin and data volume really was a driver of complexity. Those days are long gone. Well, I think I've probably said enough about Bacula. Let's get back to Percona, who is using it, and our Percona module itself. So at this point, let me hand over to Arno.
So, I've been trying to mention that we have one of our big users, customers actually, where Percona is a very important part of that tool chain to protect their databases. And Bacula is also part of their infrastructure, doing the backup and restore jobs in general. And of course, the aim is to combine those features, those capabilities, to ensure the most streamlined and fastest restores possible. The same requirements, the same, well, general ideas, of course, are applicable in many other user situations, in many other environments. But in this case, we actually worked with that company to develop what we do now, what we provide with what we call the Percona tools, the Percona interface. So now I noticed that I cannot, I can. So we have our MySQL Percona module, as we call it, which is essentially in what you would generally call a hot backup utility for MySQL-based database servers. Hot backup meaning that there's no need to stop the database engine or to lock the database during the backup. Why is that important? Well, pretty simply. Of course, for a backup to be useful, it needs to be consistent, which means we cannot just copy data for backup purposes when the database is being used and changing those data. So in some way, of course, that means the database data that we're backing up needs to be consistent and stable at the time of the backup. One way to achieve that, of course, would be to shut down the database engine and do what is called a cold backup, but that, of course, would also imply that there's a service downtime. And even if we can do a lot to minimize those downtimes, they are kind of unacceptable in many cases. So that is not going to work. So what we can do, however, is working with the Percona tool called Extra Backup, which is designed to allow to make stable, consistent, and reliable backups of active and running and in-use MySQL databases, which can also do consistent full and incremental backups, and which works with most or even all flavors of the MySQL databases that are available today. So The underlying reason why we need to do this with the Percona tool is that the MySQL product itself has no capabilities to provide true binary backups of its data. It's not possible to create database backups while the database is running by just looking at the data on disk. There's no way to do that. The way to do backups and restores with MySQL traditionally is to use a dump, which essentially means that the whole complete SQL database is converted into SQL statements during the backup, which is at the time of the backup not overly efficient and fast, but of course pretty reliable. The biggest problem there is that the database, when you actually start restoring, gets taxed a lot. It has to actually process a bunch of SQL queries, load lots of data, potentially update indexes, and that gets very slow. So this is not a good approach for large databases, and in particularly not for high transaction rate databases, which are unfortunately just the ones that you are probably most interested in being in having backups of. So we need that different approach. And we can do that with the Percona provided tools, which we use in a way that we ensure consistency of the complete backup. We can make use of full and differential and incremental backups. We make sure to cover all the data that is there. We ensure that we're not missing any transactions going on during a backup, all of that. And we can do that without making use of temporary files. So the need for extra disk space just to create a backup is pretty minimal. Then, after we have that Percona provided backup, of course, there's another option here to ensure that we can process it even faster, because essentially the binary backup that we can achieve with the extra backup capabilities of the Percona tools needs to be prepared for a restore before we can actually load it into a live database. So the traditional way to do that, of course, would be to restore that data, to prepare it, load it, and then it's done. But of course, the additional load of the prepare process is another potentially critical timing factor during the restore. So what Bacula can provide is unique in this way. That is, we can do the prepare while we do the backup, which means even while doing the backup of the MySQL database, we can ensure the most fast possible restores, which is, of course, very important in the first place, in decreasing the potential downtime in the case of a restore needed. The preparation step of a MySQL database is, however, a pretty resource-demanding task. We can offload that from the database host itself by running the prepare on what we call the storage daemon, which is our storage agent, which receives the backup data, which is usually not running on the same host the database itself is on. So we can essentially spread the load that the whole backup and preparation steps would cause across different pieces of hardware in an environment. So reducing the amount of time the MySQL servers are having to spend on backups and still preparing everything for the most short recovery time. Simply because we can more easily tolerate this extra step with its demand on time and resources during the backup, which we usually plan for, and much less so during a restore. Of course, restores are mostly needed when you're not planning for them. So being able to prepare for that by using that preparation task allows us to help our users to ensure that they have the least possible downtime of their MySQL databases. Of course, there may be environments with very many databases, potentially also different database engines included, which of course means that it's not a good idea to use a product which only covers, in this case, MySQL databases, but we need to be prepared to use or to create backups of different database engines as well, both traditional ones as well as newer ones. We need to be ready to allow to run those databases in different sorts of environments, on physical hosts, in virtual machines, in clusters of virtual machines, potentially even in containers today. Of course, that is one of the capabilities of Bacula that is pretty unique, that wide coverage of supported platforms, which allows users of Bacula Enterprise Edition to be really flexible and not be locked into specific vendors, but have the options to change their IT environments as needed, to develop them into potentially unexpected directions without having to change large parts of their infrastructure. And well, of course, it is quite efficient to be able to do that with one particular backup solution, which in our case, of course, is Bacula Enterprise Edition. So we provide all those capabilities, and we have a solution that can be used in a wider environment than just MySQL backup services. So after giving that admittedly quick rundown of why to do those things and how we do them in particular, at least a glimpse at the tip of the iceberg. Of course, Frank mentioned that we have all those interfaces that we can use. And on this slide, I have a very plain interface, which is the traditional TTY way to interact with Bacula using a console program, which means it's very usable across even low bandwidth connections, potentially even from a cell phone while traveling. And here we are seeing how we get a glimpse of what a MySQL backup would look like when done with Bacula. Well, at a very low level in a way, but we get all the information to understand what would be backed up, and we can even have some idea of the amount of data in there. The more graphical, potentially more user-friendly way is, of course, using our web front end bweb. Here we have one view on a number of clients with different capabilities, with different systems running here. And one thing is that we tried, of course, to integrate the capabilities of our plugins with our web front end. So for the MySQL backups, we have the capability to control how backups are done by, well, just clicking a few check marks specific to MySQL backups, where we are now preparing a restore of a binary mode backup, which will be automatically extracted and recovered from. So I'm trying to summarize the most important features of our MySQL Percona module. That is, of course, and I didn't mention those things in detail, we have a point-in-time recovery feature, which we can use with both dump and binary backups, because even if we're doing dump backups, we track transaction numbers and transaction logs, so it's possible to restore to particular points in time. We do backup the vital metadata from the catalog of MySQL from the database, including the relevant parts of the database engine's configuration. We can filter for particular objects both during backup and restore. That is something that can be configured per backup. And the main thing for this particular session here is, of course, we can do the prepare step automatically in the backup phase, offloading that resource demanding and time consuming task from the potentially critical backup phase, restore phase, sorry. We can combine dump and binary modes, so we can start out with a dump and then do log backups for incremental backups. And all of that can be done by a Bacula administrator or potentially even a backup operator who does not need any particular MySQL experience or training or skills, because our plugin for MySQL allows you to set up those backup jobs without needing to know too much about the internals of the database engine. Restores are very similar, although admittedly restores of databases usually have the database administrators being available and trying to get things done anyway. And of course, we do not need large temporary files, potentially even on the database host. We pass data around directly from the database engine to our plugin and from then on to its final destination without needing to dump it all onto disk first. So all of those basic features, of course, they are there, but there are more ways to increase performance when we're doing well, MySQL or Percona backups, because we can combine many of the features that the Bacula Enterprise Edition provides with particular plugin data. For example, it is possible to combine MySQL backups as a source with deduplicating storage at the back end, where, for example, our global endpoint deduplication technology allows us to not only save potentially huge amounts of disk storage when backups are kept, but also can decrease network bandwidth usage a lot during a backup, simply because most of the time a good part of the data to backup will already have been backed up and can thus be deduplicated right when we start reading the data at the client end. That also works, of course, with virtualized systems, with different sorts of file level backups and with many of our plugins. We can do deduplication in another way as well, not using our built-in global endpoint deduplication, but relying on capabilities of deduplicating storage appliances in use as storage backends for Bacula data. So wherever we have a storage appliance that provides deduplication, preferably fixed block deduplication, it is possible to use our aligned volume plugin to make best use of that. And of course, we have not stopped working on building new features and capabilities. We are still working on providing better, more reliable, and more cost-effective solutions to users of even traditional databases like DB2, and we will be announcing features, capabilities, and plugins on those topics in the near future, I think. All of that, of course, to allow our users and our customers to save their time, save a bit of money, and provide them more capabilities to integrate different and potentially tricky and complicated well, systems to backup and databases and environments into their existing data backup environments with Bacula Enterprise Edition. So the goal is for us still to provide a single platform for all of your applications. All in IT environments, complete IT environments should be backed up with Bacula Enterprise Edition. We are not ruling out to support traditional Unix systems as well as modern containerized systems. We are providing a solution that can cover the wide range in there. We try to automate things that to an extent that a backup administrator doesn't need to do too many things manually. And of course, and as Frank already mentioned, we are not charging per byte backed up. Data volume does not have an impact on our pricing. As we are pretty flexible and cover a very wide range of systems to back up data from, we have a very flexible solution that is very easily adapted to changing needs and growing environments. We try to provide a solution that can deal with even very flexible and potentially aggressively improved IT environments. So at this stage, I think I covered most of the things I want to say. If there are questions, we are here to answer them. Could be technical questions, which I will try to answer. Anything non-technical, like sales related, probably Frank is a better person to answer, but we have him with us still. Thank you for listening in and to watching.
Hi folks, we are now transitioning into our Q&A session. As a reminder, please navigate to the bottom of Zoom and open the Q&A pod to type in your question and send it in. I do have a question here. Does this plugin work with MariaDB?
Yes, that is definitely a technical question, I think. And well, it does. Although I must admit we have not tested all flavors and all variants of MySQL and its spin-offs and forks that we can find in the wild. We have definitely run tests and successful tests with the MariaDB versions you get shipped with recent Red Hat Enterprise Linux versions, same as with CentOS, and we also did test with, of course, Oracle's MySQL flavor, both up to date and the more traditional versions that we sometimes find. All of those can be backed up. Of course, the Percona tool stack, including the Percona database server engine, is also supported.
Great. Second question, is the restore time really much faster with this plugin?
Well, yes, it is. How much so? I cannot not easily claim to know. It depends a lot on very, very many factors. But as I hinted at, we developed that capability well together with and for a customer of ours who's running some, from my point of view, really gigantic MySQL database systems. And well, it works for them and makes restores possible, which has been a problem before. So I would say the answer to that question is yes, definitely.
Okay, and we have another question here. How much does this module cost?
So I guess, Arno, I'd probably better take this one, so thank you.
Thank you, Frank.
Before answering the question, I need to do a little bit of context setting for people who don't know how Bacula Systems operates. So the first thing to say is that we operate, our business model is a subscription-based business model, so it's an annual subscription. We think this is a much better model for our customers because they don't have to buy an upfront enterprise license. So we've always operated in this mode. It's our only mode of operation for many years. We think we're leading the way here. Actually, more and more people look to go the same path, but we've always been there. The second thing is we don't charge by data volume. It doesn't matter how much data you're backing up in this space. There's no charge for the data volume. What we do charge by is the number of machines, the number of clients, or the number of servers, but the number of machines backing up, which we think is really the driver of complexity. And maybe one final point I would make is that the way we price is we're pricing for the whole estate. So we're not pricing for each individual database or each individual machine per se. It's for the whole estate when we price our modules. So the price for this one is of the order of $5,000 to $6,000, which I think everybody will agree is an extremely competitive pricing. Of course, if you're a Bacula Enterprise Edition customer already today, then obviously it's a very low cost, incremental cost to add this capability into your environment. And of course, if you're not a Bacula Enterprise customer today, there's still time, and please feel free to contact us, and I'm sure we can help you move down that path. But it really is an extremely competitive pricing, and this is very, very true of all of the Bacula Enterprise Edition modules and indeed our core software. We are very much at the order of magnitude lower cost than most of our competitors, and that's something we're very proud of. It's one of the reasons we have such a high retention rate of customers, running in the high 90% over many, many years now, which is, again, industry leading. So very low cost, and we're very proud of the fact we're able to bring products to market with this kind of price point.
All right, it appears that there are no further questions. So Frank, I'll throw it back to you for any closing remarks.
Okay, super, thank you. Well, thank you everybody for joining us today and listening to our story on Percona. And thank you, Arno, for your clear presentation on where we are and what we're doing. If what we said today interests you around Percona or any other part of what Bacula Systems and Bacula Enterprise Edition is up to, then please feel free to contact us. Probably the fastest way is to go to our website and contact us through the Contact Us page on our website. You'll find there a lot more information about Bacula Systems, the kind of customers we have, some reference stories, our technology and our products, which we're very proud to take to market. And thank you again for joining us today. And I wish you all a good morning, a good afternoon, and a good evening. Thank you. Bye-bye.